Hi, and welcome to the Drawing Inspiration Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Hendley. Episode 1, Beginnings. So why are we here? Well, I've been exploring art, specifically graphite, colored pencil, as well as digital drawing for the last probably 15 years. And I wanted to get better at it. And one of the ways to do that is to teach or offer people some insight into your techniques. So I'm hopeful that I will become a better artist through this podcast. And I'm hoping that I can inspire you to either start drawing or become a better artist. I've tried watercolor as well as oil painting in the past. And at this point, it falls outside of my interest. Maybe it will change in the future. But this podcast will be specifically focused around drawing, the inspiration for drawing various techniques. I will have guests on where we will talk about what inspires them, and it should be an interesting run. So I hope that you will come back and join in future podcasts as we explore this wonderful world of drawing. So I've been drawing for about 14 years. I wanted to be an artist when I was 5. I have it written down in a book where, you're asked by your parents, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I think one of them was a zookeeper and the other was an artist. And it's something I did through primary school. I never really explored it much further than that. I did some drawing in college, in engineering with regard to kind of isometric drawing and those kinds of things. I really enjoyed that. And I never really got back to it until our first daughter was born. And in kind of dealing with her, because I was a kind of a work-at-home dad, I started drawing dinosaurs just as part of our time together. And through that, I started becoming interested in drawing again. So in 2004, I drew a chickadee for my wife, and that kind of started me down this path. And since then, I've probably drawn around 60, maybe 65 images. I've really enjoyed it. I took a course, a 3-day workshop last fall in 2018, which was fantastic and kind of elevated my game with graphite drawing. And I've been drawing on the iPad using Procreate and a couple other apps for the last, I'm going to say almost 2 years, more like maybe 18 months. And that's been fantastic as well. So I'm going to explore all of this in future episodes and talk through kind of the pluses and minuses. Getting into digital can be quite expensive. And so the focus will be largely on graphite and colored pencil and some of the techniques I've learned that I can share with you. I am going to be kind of focused on those who are starting drawing for the first time, or maybe an intermediate artist and wants to kind of up their game. I do encourage you, if you've got kids, that they are welcome to listen to this podcast. It will be catered to that crowd as well with regard to content. So I'm hopeful that will be an interesting experience. I hope to have fairly comprehensive show notes for each episode that I'll post on the website with links to some of the tools and some of the art that I've talked about in the episode as well. And I'm hopeful that will allow you to kind of explore things beyond actually listening to the episode itself. So why am I doing this? Part of getting good at something, I think, is learning to teach it. And I did do some classes for my daughter's grade 2, grade 3, grade 4, in how to draw, how to do shading, how to deal with perspective. And I really enjoyed that. The kids really enjoyed that. I mean, even now, I guess it's 12 years later, 11 years later, I'm still hearing from the kids about how much they enjoyed it. So I think that, learning to take what you know and what you do and be able to translate that into others being able to leverage that and what they want to do and what they want to explore, I think is powerful. So part of this is I want to get better at drawing by teaching you what I know about drawing. And so I think it's a bit of we both benefit from that. I hope to become better, and I hope to see you become better as an artist. And if you're just listening to this and you've drawn stick people your whole life, this may be an opportunity for you to explore drawing and explore art and get to the point where you can up your game. So I hope to cover things like what inspires me to draw, and in turn, what inspires you. I hope to that we can have a conversation beyond the podcast so that I can see some of the work that you're doing, understand what motivates you, and I can share some of those stories as well. I'll talk about some of the tools, the pencils that I use, both graphite and colored, as well as the paper that I use. I've probably 3 or 4 that I'm set on right now, but I've tried a number. and some of the accessories that go along with that. I'll also talk about my iPad and the Apple Pencil and my experience going from the first iPad Pro to the most current version, which is the one I use day to day. I'll go through some of the techniques that I've learned over the past few years and go through some exercises in that as well. I also have some guests lined up to come onto the show to talk about what they do, specifically around how they draw, what inspires them. I'm also going to have some people that will talk about how you can take your art and make it more physical if you are doing digital pieces and you want to print those. I'm planning to have somebody to come on and talk about that experience as well, and ways that you can share some of your work with friends and family. So it's been a busy few weeks for me. I did start a new course called the Newcastle Natural History Illustration course. It's provided by a university in Australia, and the focus is on observing and interpreting nature. It was a 6-week course. It's free, but there was a nominal fee for a certificate. And I did about the first 2 weeks of that course, and just with timing and everything else that was going on, I decided not to complete it this year. I probably will go back next year. It's an interesting course in trying to understand observation, the foreground, the background, the midground, looking at texture, looking at shading. I thought it was an interesting course, and so I may go back. I think a lot of those skills I have in play now, and so I think it's an interesting course for many people, especially considering it's free. So you can pay a nominal fee and get a certificate. I think for most that's not needed. I'm also working on a chickadee, a graphite piece. The size is 9 by 12, and the paper I'm using is a Strathmore Bristol Smooth, and I'm using a combination of 3mm clutch pencils. So those are kind of the blue drafting pencils. Nova and Statler make them. And so I'm using a combination of those as well as 0.3mm Pentel 1000 pencils. And I'll talk about those tools in the future, but that's going well. I probably have about 3 or 4 hours left in it. I've probably spent about, I'm going to say 10 hours on this piece so far. And as with most images, this is once again a chickadee on a birch tree. It's not necessarily the animal, it's the background, or it's the tree, or it's the bark that takes the most time. And I've done a woodpecker in the past, and it's the same thing. I will spend probably 20% on the bird and the rest of the time on the bark just to get that looking right. So I'm also working on a few digital pieces. I just finished a butterfly series, and I plan on doing 2 or 3 more. I did a quick Einstein on my iPad as well, just kind of doodling around. I'm also working on an osprey picture. I'm not sure I'm going to finish that one. There are a couple other digital pieces I'm planning. In most cases, they just come to me and I decide to put them down on the iPad. So I have a few more digital pieces. I'm not going to talk about them right now, but if you follow me, and I'll share those links at the end of the show, you'll be able to see kind of the progress in all these pieces. I tend not to be too secretive with any of this. So I love sharing my work as a work in progress. I will share it on Instagram and Twitter. Unless I'm doing a commission piece, I will show you kind of the stages as I work through it. If it's a digital piece, I'll most likely share the time lapse that Procreate creates automatically. I think one of the exciting things that's happened in the last few weeks is Procreate version 4.3, which supports text. And that's interesting because in the past, you would have to actually draw the text out instead of actually using a text tool like you would in something like Photoshop. So now you can create text as a separate layer, and you have a series of fonts that you can choose from. You can manipulate that text. As soon as you do, it rasterizes that, and that means that it basically converts it from text to a graphic. And so once you do that, you're not able to go back and modify the text. But it does provide some interesting options with regard to embedding text within an image, especially if you're doing some ultra realistic and you want to be able to put up an exit sign or a speed limit sign, or you want to have a restaurant name or whatever the case. It's really easy way to kind of move that forward. So there's a number of other features that came out in 4.3. One of the other ones is the ability to basically do animation. And so taking a series of layers and modifying those layers ever so slightly and then exporting them together as an animated GIF. Yes, I said GIF, not GIF. And I think that looks interesting. I'm going to try some of that, I think, myself as well. And I'll talk about this in the future. I think there's some exciting opportunities here, especially with text and the animation together. So I'm going to try some of that, I think, as well. So I thought it'd be fun to maybe have a little bit of homework. I'll try to do it every episode. And so for this week, I think maybe if you can, just take 10 minutes and draw. And it can be anywhere, it can be anything. You don't have to show it to anybody. If you choose to share it or to show it, you can use the hashtag drawinginspirationfm, and that can be on Twitter or Instagram, and I'll find it. And but if you choose not to, that's good as well. And I'm hoping that even if you just sit down and draw for 10 minutes, that could become 15 or 20. And you can draw about something you're interested in. It could be a movie. It could be a piece of furniture in your house. It could be a flower. It could be a dog. It could be you're sitting in a coffee shop and the person in front of you, you could decide to sketch them as well. So I do encourage you just to sit down and draw for 10 minutes. And if you have young kids, it's always a fun experience because they're always so positive about an older person drawing. And I think it's a much easier audience when you've got those folks around versus someone your age. Because I think we tend to be too hard on ourselves when we draw when there is an audience of our own age. But I think kids love being able to see parents drawing, and aunts and uncles. So if you can do that, I think that would be fun. So you can find me at mikehendley.com. I have a blog where I post a number of things, including some of the work that I'm doing, some of the pieces, both digital as well as graphite. The show notes can be found at drawinginspiration.fm. I'm on Instagram as Mike_Hendley, and I'm on Twitter at Mike Hendley. Thanks for listening. Have a great week and keep drawing. Theme music for this podcast is Acid Jazz, provided by Kevin MacLeod.